Hi, welcome again.
Hey, well, again, we're now are being recorded and welcome to Lyn Diefenbach, and we're so excited to have you here and her husband Ken. Anyway, Lyn, let's get started and I would just first of all, you are such an accomplished artist, and you have uh, I was just looking at your website, and over the past 20 years, the way more than 50 major awards that you've gotten. What an honor. And looking at your work, it's very understandable how that all has come to be. But and you're coming to IAPS this year, and you're also coming to the plein air convention in the Smoky Mountains in May, I believe, and then IAPS in June. So
yes.
Anyway, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such a privilege. It's so much fun, isn't it, to be able to get together with people on the other side of the world. I mean, that's the only good thing that COVID did. It made the world very, very small. And so I've really enjoyed being able to demonstrate and speak with people, over the other side of the world. It's just amazing. So my privilege.
Well, thank you. So, this is really informal, the way we do this, but I would just love for you to tell everybody, how you, as a child, what was your artistic inspiration, and when did you decide to be an artist? And just talk about your journey in the world of arts.
Yeah, well, I always say I was born to be an artist because we had a family heritage of artists and craftspeople. So a number of generations before were painters and potters. And within my immediate family, my mum was a potter. My dad was a wood turner. My older sister was a world-renowned weaver. My second older sister is a lead lighter. My brother catches great big fish. That has to be an art.
It is.
And then I was a painter. But I can remember standing as a little child. We used to go and visit great aunt Elsie, and she was quite an accomplished painter for someone who was never trained. She was a single lady postmistress, and but she'd win local shows and things, and I'd stand in front of Aunt Elsie's work and I'd say, I'm going to be an artist like great Aunt Elsie one day. And so that's all I was painting in oils in what we call primary school. So when I was about 11 years old, I bought my own set of oil paints, and I sold my first painting at 12. And I was very fortunate that we had a local art society that took me under their wing, and they would take me out painting with them and encourage me to exhibit. So it was all just part of my general growing up. And my mother was an educator. She was a teacher, and she believed that busy children were happy children. And so we were always entering competitions, art competitions, writing competitions, so on and so forth, baking competitions, you name it, we were doing it. So, so that was the early days. I did go to art school, art college, hated it, absolutely hated it, and left. I did a year very successfully, but I just, it wasn't my space to be. And they weren't going to teach me how to paint proper, in inverted commas, and I wanted to learn properly. Now, at that stage, a little kid coming from the country didn't know anything about the Florence Academy of Art or something like that. And if I'd known, my mum asked me years later, she said, Lyn, do you ever regret not getting the degree? And I said, no, Mum, I don't. But what I do regret is not knowing about the Florence Academy of Art or the Russian Academy of Art, because I would have been there. So I then felt like my whole life has been playing catch up on things that I didn't have formal training in. And every so often I go off and I do workshops with people whose work I admire to see if I know what I know, or to hear what I know in a different language. Then I've only probably done 6 months of my whole life in any kind of learning situation as far as formal learning. One was with Mr. Daniel E. Green in 1999, and that was revolutionary to me. He gave me wings to fly, even though there were 42 students at that workshop, and I probably had 3 minutes of his time at my easel, and he said 3 things to me, but those 3 things made me feel as though I could pursue my art in a way, a purposeful way, and I could achieve what I wanted to achieve with practice and easel miles. And so the rest of my time has been spent painting, and I've been known to do 20-hour days before. And every day, almost, I'm in the studio painting, or doing something to do with art. It might be traveling too to get to workshops. So I teach across the world. I pinch myself every day thinking, oh, really? Okay, I'll go there. You know, oh, do you want to come to Alaska? Okay, oh, I'll go. And I've been very, very fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, you know, that it doesn't mean that you have to have a formal degree to be a great artist.
No, no. And I know many professional artists who've said that they failed at art at school, and yet that here they are, you know, top of the pops. I think it's more to do with perseverance and persistence and easel miles, but taking time out to still be a student. I think being a student is very, very important. And to be forever a student, forever trying to understand more deeply what you know, sometimes superficially or on the surface, but to learn more, always be looking to learn more. And I love watching other people painting and explaining why they're doing something or how they're doing something. And it sort of tweaks and puts little alarm bells or little bells ringing in your head, thinking, oh, that's really interesting, you know, or that's an interesting way of explaining that. And I store that away, ferret that away into my teacher's knowledge bag. And then, oh, look at that. And I think one of the things that the greatest area of learning for me has been in teaching, because students get to places that you would never get to yourself, or they do. I always allow people to bring their own reference material to choose what they want to paint and work alongside of them, and they choose things that I would never choose, but then I see the outcome and I think, well, gee, that's interesting. And also in teaching, you have to understand your own processes to be able to plausibly teach someone else. And in understanding your own processes of how you get from point A to point B, it really makes the understanding really helps you to cement your way of working and understand it. And in understanding, there's great liberty.
So Lyn, Susie asked the question. She said, what were the 3 things that meant so much to you in the Daniel Green workshop?
Oh, the 3 things.
Yeah.
They were pretty ordinary. But they sort of tweaked my brain. The first thing was that you know, Mr. Green came by, and we called him Mr. Green. Mr. Green came by. And he says, step aside. We were working from life, from a model, and step aside. And he looked at my work. He says, your plumb lines are wrong. And I knew my plumb lines. I knew it was out of kilter. But we had listened to him talk for 2 days, which was wonderful. But, you know, by the time we started at the easel, I just couldn't wait to get going. And so I was skipping things that I shouldn't have been skipping. So he said, hold up your plumb line. And oh, Ken can bring it around. It's very dusty. Can you see that? Sort of.
Sort of. Pull it over your head. No, in front of your head, sorry.
In front of my head.
And up a bit. Up. A little bit more.
Right?
A little bit more.
But anyway, that was one of the paintings that I did with Daniel E. Green. And so anyway, he said, hold up your plumb line. And I held up my plumb line with my hands going, you know, all fearful. And, you know, it's good to stay a student. It's good to always be high on your toes. And he said, fix your plumb lines. And then he left. So I fixed my plumb lines. The next time he came by, he said, step aside. And he said to me, your skill is such that you should be using triple oil prime Belgium linen. I thought, triple oil prime Belgium linen, I'm on this cotton canvas. and I thought, that's really expensive. He must think I'm okay. And so, and then the next one was, I'd done a background behind, not that painting, but another painting, and everyone was coming by. I wasn't happy with the background. And everyone was coming by and said, oh, love your background, love your background. And I'm thinking, I don't really like it. And Mr. Green came by and he said, change your background. And I thought, trust your gut, trust your instinct. And so that were the three things. And I think also just being in that environment of intense study, of listening to someone who had so much knowledge in the art world was so encouraging and inspiring that I went home like a fox with my tail on fire and painted and painted and painted and painted some more.
Great. So as you work in your field, what are some of your favorites, Lyn? You know, do you have favorite books that you like? I mean, as far as art books, do you have favorite books, authors?
Well, I'm not a great reader. I often don't have time to read because I'm too busy painting, of course. But there is one book that I would highly recommend to everyone, and probably everyone's already read, and that is Richard Schmid's Alla Prima, Everything I Know About Painting. That book to me unlocked a lot of the technical know-how that I hadn't truly understood even after 20 years of practice. And when I read that book, it was like all the light bulbs went on. And I suddenly understood, especially about edges, lost and found hard, soft edges, and about values. And so that book, I think I've read 8 times, and I continue to read it. And I've taken on board his philosophies of line, value, color, edge, being the 4 technical areas of painting that you can go wrong in. Of course, after composition, after a bad composition or a good composition. And so that's a book I'd highly recommend for anyone. The other one, a great influence would be Harley Brown. His Starving Artist book, which is just published again, republished. And it was, I love the freedom of Harley Brown. I think Harley Brown within Australia influenced every pastelist for years in the way in which they approach colour. So that was certainly a good one too. They would be the 2, I think, that have impacted me. And as I said, I don't often read because I'm so busy painting.
Right.
And I paint to all hours that I don't read a book. I do listen to podcasts and every so often watch a video, on painting. One of my favorite things is to watch Portrait Artist of the Year in the UK, and they have a whole host of series of groups of 4 people in pods painting a well-known person, and it's so inspiring because anything goes really, and it enables all of us to think, oh yeah, well, my painting's not so bad after all. It doesn't really, you can just paint and express yourself, and that's very helpful, and it gives you great liberty in how you approach something. Yeah, that would be the main thing.
Great. I think if it's okay with you, let's take a look at some of your works, and you can talk about those, and maybe talk a little bit about your technique as you show us those, and if you have favorite products and things like that. We've got an hour, a little right now. We've got about an hour, about 45 minutes, but fill that in. So let's take a look at some of your works. I do have one quick question though, and I know you work both, and your oils are lovely, your pastels are lovely. Do you have a preference of medium?
No, I don't have a preference at all. I think both oils and pastel are very compatible things to work in, because they're both working from dark to light. It just so happens that one's slimy and one's dry. They're doing exactly the same approach. One has a brush and one has your hand immediately on it. Exactly the same way. My choices as to whether I do pastel or oil, if it's going to be large, of course, I wouldn't do a pastel because it costs too much to frame the thing, unless it's a commission, and then they can pay for the framing. And also the weight of the glass on pastel, has to be considered. So no, I think I love working in both. As a matter of fact, I don't think there's much of a difference in appearance in my work, whether it's oil or pastel. Maybe the pastels are slightly softer on the edges. I'm not too sure on that one. But most people look at my work and they say, is that oil or pastel? And they give it a poke. And I end up with fingerprints on the glass of all my pastels. First of all, I always use museum quality glass. And so you can't see that there's glass there. And I've always got fingerprints on my pastels, which is really annoying because people shouldn't be poking at them anyway. But they can't work out.
Like they don't believe you that it's really under glass.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I end up with all these fingerprints stuck all over the place. But no, I don't mind. As long as I'm painting. I even actually do watercolor. And at one stage I was very, very quite good at watercolor. And within Australia, we've got some brilliant watercolorists, and there were a lot of watercolor teachers out there. And so, but very few oil painters, oil teachers and pastel teachers. So I went down that route thinking, oh, well, there's enough of those out there. I'll go down this way. But I still use watercolor when I'm out on plein air, or if I'm traveling, or in my diaries, or whatever. And pencil, good old graphite pencil. There's nothing as beautiful as a graphite drawing. So I think anything goes. Anything goes. I don't have a preference as long as I'm fiddling and diddling. My hand's always busy. Ken, one day we were out with a group, and I'd forgotten to bring my drawing gear, and he said, look what you can do on your phone. You've got this program on your phone where you can actually draw on your phone. So I thought, oh, this is great. And so I got out my phone, and I'm standing there with my phone, and I'm scribbling around with my finger, having a lovely time. It has such potential. So I haven't done it again because usually I had my drawing gear with me, but it has such potential. and so much fun trying to express it, you know, just with finger drawing. So there you go, anything goes.
Lyn, do you when you're out in the field, do you use a transparent watercolor, or do you use gouache, or both?
I always have a tube of gouache around, just in case. Because you know, I think I hit a pure watercolor once every 20. the rest have to. I think you know, I don't do enough of it these days to get that pure translucent watercolor. But every so often I really surprise myself and I think, oh, look at that, wasn't that exciting? And oh, I can do it now. And then the next 20 are, you know, add some gouache and hope for the best. But I like gouache. I like gouache as its own medium too. Even pastel pencils, watercolor pencils, watercolor crayons are great. So yeah, the sky's the limit. I've been launched into the world of journaling as well. I'd actually like to show you some of the journals. Ken, could you just pick those up over there? Just out of interest too, as to what you can do. I've taken to journaling, both journaling with pictures and with writing. And I found it incredibly cathartic, incredibly good for your mental health, because as I travel around, and I'm doing these journals for my grandson Noah. I'll find something here and show you what I've been doing. So, doing these types of things, I think, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, up a bit. So. Kids saying up.
Yeah, beautiful.
So that type with writing, so that's very simple, and the writing behind that is behind the hustle and bustle, the back streets exist. Life is quieter, slower, but happens nonetheless. And you know, and I'm doing things like, look, which way? That, no, other way, this way. Very simple drawings, and they're all done en plein air. It's all I can, and he's trying, and they've all got writing in them. So things like this type of thing. Other way, boats, so on and so forth. Here we are over on Keppel Island, in my hometown of Yeppoon, this way. So, you know, and all these writings with it. So my writing with that one is, here in this place my roots are deep. Here I was born, here I grew up, here I was married, here my children live. Here I have suffered great loss and have found great joy. This is my home. And so I'm doing all of this type of thing, traveling overseas too, say to a little place called Appenzell in Switzerland. Here we are, this way up. And so, and I'll go forward. And it's all just sitting there and watching the people go by. And all of that's done with coloured pencils, you name it, chuck in anything, pens, so on and so forth. It's a little bit easier to carry than all of your pastels. But that being said, I also do en plein air pastels, but I don't write all over them. But even when I went to Uganda, had a lovely time doing animals in Uganda, painting things I'd never painted before, or drawing things that I'd never drawn before. So leopards and what else? And rhinoceroses. So, you know, when do you get the chance to do things like that and to put them into drawings? But I've also found, since doing that, this kind of drawing, it has really improved my painting. And en plein air as well, plein air painting improves your studio work, improves your ability, I think, to see what's important first, broad shapes, and then refining them to smaller shapes if you have the time. My en plein air painting is a lot broader than my studio painting because of time. And that was one of the things in my early days of painting. I used to paint with a size-o brush, and I'll get onto my other works soon. But in my early days of painting, I used to paint with a size-o brush, one hair on the end. I was an oil painter only, landscapes, for many, many, many years. And I would take up to a year to finish a piece of work. And then it'd get to the gallery, and so within 5 minutes, and I think, oh, like having babies every year, really? And I'll never be known because my work is never seen in the public arena. It's only ever seen on some private home, in some private home. And so for many years, I wasn't actually seen in the public arena until I decided I was tired of using this size-o brush. And I saw pastels. I saw an article on pastel, and I didn't know anything about it. And I went off and did a workshop with one of our Australian pastelists to find out how to use this stuff. And we went en plein air, and we did an en plein air drawing with color notations. Went back into the studio, and I took 2 hours to do a little 10 by 12 inch painting. And he came by and he said, "Lyn, you've done. Do it again in half an hour." And so I did. And I worked so hard and so fast, you know, but I ended up with exactly the same composition, exactly the same color harmony, value harmony, but there was a more painterly way of working. And he said, "Right, from now on, you're only allowed half an hour. It doesn't matter how big or how small you go, half an hour for you." And I actually passed out during the workshop because when you work so quickly, you hold your breath. And so I was completely starved of oxygen for the whole week. But he then told me, when you get home, you do 10 half-hour half sheets, you do 10 half-hour quarter sheets, half sheets, 10 half-hour full sheets of pastel paper. By that time, your attention to detail will meet up with a more creative way.
Half and full.
Well, meet up with a creative way of working. And so that's what I did. And now I can work en plein air and finish a painting within, 20 minutes or so, which is a painting in its own right, quite a nice piece of work. Or I can go to high refinement in my studio work, should I so desire. So anyway, let's have a look at high refinement for a little bit. We'll go on to the one behind me. This is a fairly recent piece of work.
Hang on, just give me two.
Ken will find it. It's called "I Am Not Afraid." I'm not afraid. It shows up on the screen a little bit dark and a little bit peculiar, but anyway, that's all right. So my theme here, you can see if we come in a bit closer, Ken, on any area, on me in particular. This was my response to COVID and all the things that are happening in the world. I wanted to make this statement of me emerging from a medieval tapestry, and you can see parts of me are still tattooed in the tapestry. If you go down a bit lower, Ken, even my dog is there behind my legs. She's tattooed in tapestry. But on my arms and my brushes, we go up there. I can tell, can you go across?
No, you can't.
Come across.
Okay.
So I can see their brushes.
The brushes are there. Are you not seeing it?
No, I'm not seeing the brushes. Wrong side, wrong way. But anyway, you can see that my hands aren't tattooed. My brushes, if we can get there, I don't know what's happened. Might have to shrink it a bit, Ken. My brushes are emerging from the tapestry. My head's emerging from the tapestry. I'm not tattooed by the tapestry. Never mind.
No, there we go.
There we go. So my thinking, this was a painting that was about 11 years in the making. I had the inspiration 11 years ago when I'm very interested in medieval tapestries, and I'll show you another one in a minute. And it just so happened when I photographed this particular tapestry, it had perspex halfway up it, and there was I reflected in it. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And and in the photograph, my reference photograph, I was tattooed with tapestry. And I thought, oh, that is really interesting. So I wanted to make this statement about giants in the land and all our fears. You know, I am not afraid, for I am not alone. For the Lord my God is with me. That was my statement. And I'm emerging from the tapestry defiant, not only defiant, but at peace, looking cautiously. I've got my dog with me. She doesn't care because she's with me. And I had so much fun doing it 11 years later, doing this painting. I paint not in layers, but I paint just bit by bit, inch by inch, row by row. And I do this with every painting, both in pastel and or oil. I start in the top corner, the top left corner, and work my way from whatever is behind to whatever is in front. And I work wet against wet in the case of oils, so that I can control my edges. Obviously, I don't get the whole thing finished in a day. That painting took probably about 6 weeks to complete. But it was just working bit by bit, inch by inch, row by row, and working out the color relationships, the value relationships, the edge relationships, the shapes, the drawing shapes of each area. So we can go on to in the light of history, the tapestry pastel pen. And this I exhibited at IAPS a few years back.
Oh, it takes a little bit to get there.
Yeah, it just takes a little bit to get there. Things are slow here in Oz.
No, it's your husband.
Or is it just Ken?
It's just me. I gotta find it. I should know what it looks like.
Yes, the vase with tapestry.
I
No?
didn't put it in there. That was stupid.
Oh, well,
No, I get it.
oh, he's got it.
I get it.
He's got it.
I get it.
Got it? Got it,
Yeah,
got
I
it.
do.
Yeah, he does. Sorry about this, everyone.
Yeah, idiot operator.
This is Ken and Lyn. This is the Ken and Lyn show. It often is.
There we go.
Here we go. Here we go. So this was exhibited at IAPS a few years back. So here we have another tapestry behind a still life. This is pastel, and it's about 18 by 24 inches, I think, something like that.
Yes.
And the way in which I approached this with all of its detail was that it was on a piece of Fisher 400 paper, I seem to remember.
It is.
And I stained the whole paper with a burnt sienna. So I put down the dry pastel, a bit of dry pastel, burnt sienna all over the paper, and then I liquefied it with a solvent. In my case, it was just an odorless solvent. You can use Gamsol, you can use alcohol, whatever, as most of you would know. I just stained the paper over all burnt sienna, and then I worked piece by piece. The burnt sienna, if we can just come in even on the vase, Ken, or on the tapestry and just work your way down, just come in a little bit closer, and we can see the overall effect. So
Exactly.
you can see the burnt sienna coming through still on the vase into the reflective area. I really love reflections. The world of reflections to me is, it adds a whole new dimension to life, you know, because it's not only reflected light, you see the life of the tabletop, you see the life of the reflections over the top of it. You see things behind you reflected, you see things in front of you, sideways, everything reflected. So you actually see so much more of life than you do if you're just looking at it. And I enjoy that. But the thing with reflections is that it's the world of edges, of hard and soft, lost and found edges. How do you make something look like it's reflected into glass, or seeing things through a window? And I've spent my whole life working on edges. And then when I started the series of reflections, I had to undo a lot of my philosophies to make it feel as though things were behind glass or reflected into glass. So if we can go back out on that one. Let's have a look. Another significant one for me was reflecting in Paris. This is a pastel. It's I'm not too sure on the size of it. Ken will tell me.
2 ticks.
It's coming. Here we are.
16.5 by 22.
So this is 16.5 by 22 inches. And this is a pastel. I honestly didn't believe that I could do this reflective series in pastel. So I decided to give it a go. This is of an orchid shop in Paris, and hopefully you can see clearly enough. I'm here, I'm actually in the, as you're looking at it, the left-hand corner. My reflection is you can see the 2 legs and a dress there, and I'm taking the photograph of the window with its reflections. I'm seeing the printing on the shop window, and behind me, I'm seeing the reflections of people walking by. I'm looking through a window out to the right and seeing the cars of Paris coming over a bridge on the right-hand side. And I'm looking through the back window and seeing the skyline of Paris, as well as the interior of the shop. And how do you thread all of that? It's just, it does your mind in, really. And I know and I can't help myself. It's like a big puzzle. And I do like puzzles. I like my way of painting in complexity and in simplicity is to pull apart what I'm looking at. And it's all done in those terms of line, value, color, edge. You might think, well, why bother? Why bother with something so complex? I just can't help myself. I love the illusion of being able to create the illusion of these reflections, of those flowers, the flowers are threaded through people. And if you go in closer, you can see more and more people in behind the window itself. If we just come in a little bit closer on any one of those orchidy things, Ken, that would be good. So we can see signs and legs and people walking through. And you have to have such an understanding and acknowledge, especially values and edges, to make it look as though these people are threaded through and sitting behind glass. It's to me, it's mental gymnastics, but it's also a lot of fun. Let's go to something
simple. I'm answering a question.
Oh, Ken's answering a question. Let's go to something simpler. That particular painting was done on Ming Art paper, a paper from China, and it was the first time I've ever used it, and I was doing so complex, doing something I'd never done before. So I often do that because I'm masochistic, I think. And I often demonstrate something that I've never used on paper that I've never used before. and also doing things that I've never done before, simply because it keeps my brain alert and kicking instead of depending on, oh, I've done this before, so, you know, I think, to me, doing things in that way, my brain just turns off. I like to, and I think of, how did I do this before? And to me, that's Danger Will Robinson. I need to be always challenged and always looking for something new in a new way. Let's go, Ken, to
Lyn, Lyn,
yes.
could you tell me what the Ming paper is? That a coated paper? Is it sanded?
Yeah, it's sanded. It's a beautiful paper, but I haven't been able to get hold of it for ages. At one stage, the Chinese did bring it to Ajax. It was Ming Art paper, and it is a sanded surface.
Okay.
It holds a lot of pastel. I really love working on it. Very good for pastel pencil, very good for pastel, but I haven't seen it for a while. So I don't know what's happened. It's a bit hard to get things out of China, especially here in Australia. So yeah, so it's gone by the by. Some of my favourite, let me talk about some of my favourite papers before we go on. One is Fisher 400, Fisher FISHER 400. It currently is hard to get what used to be available on Amazon, but I think Mr. Fisher, it's a paper from the UK. And it will be back online soon. I like it because it's very, very robust. It's a little bit more sanded than UArt, but probably the closest to it in UArt is the UArt 400 or 600, which I use if I don't have the Fisher 400. The other surface I like, and I've been experimenting with, is Pastel Matte, which is a totally different surface. The reason why I started experimenting with Pastel Matte was that I was having a little bit of trouble when sending my work internationally, that the darks were jumping off the paper and moving around everywhere. And the Pastel Matte holds the pastel very, very well. Even when you're working, there's very little that drops down. But of course, you have to use a slightly different technique for Pastel Matte, because you put it down and it doesn't move. And I do like to blend here and there. And I use my finger. Who said that? But I use my finger for blending. But there's blending and there's blending. It's not all over blending. It's edge just tweaking here and tweaking there. And that's how I achieve what I achieve, especially in my florals. The other surface that I use would be the ampersand board, but not so much anymore. But I still have a quantity of it left. I like the ampersand board. It allows you to do a lot of different techniques, stroke over stroke, blending, and still being able to do stroke over the top of it. What else? They would probably be my picks for pastel. The types of pastels that I use are huge and varied. My first set of pastels was a set of 60 half sticks of Rembrandt. That was my first box. And within a week, I thought, I can't achieve anything actually. So, although that was in the days when Canson Mighty X was the only paper, because I've been pasteling now for some 35 years. And 30 years. Anyway, a long time I've been pasteling. At that time, when I started pastels, Canson Mighty Ants, the original paper with the dotty side on one side and the smooth on the other, which I still use sometimes for portraits. I quite like it because you have to be extremely sensitive with the touch of your hand when you're using Canson Mighty Ants, not my text, not my anything else, but the original paper. You have to be extremely aware of the weight of your hand, because you can fill up the paper very, very quickly otherwise. And when I see students who are very heavy-handed, I go and get them Canson Mighty Ends and I say, use that and you will learn to be lighter with your hand. Because I think success with pasteling comes in the sensitivity of your touch, not only the artist inside your head, but in how you control the weight of your hand and the direction in which you sculpt with your hand. I call pasteling sculpting in tone. So I have to use tone, I have to use, or value, I have to use the weight of my hand, I have to use the action of my hand, and even in blending, blending is just not mindless blending. Blending is a sculptural action. And so everything I do is put in under those banners. So the pastels that I've since, after my set of 60 half sticks of Rembrandt, and Rembrandts are great now that we've got all these heavily sanded papers, everyone's looking for slightly harder pastels so that you've got a bit more control. And so Rembrandts come back into their own. I've got Rembrandt, I've got Holbeins, I've got Sennelier, I've got Great American Artworks, I've got Unison, I've got Terry Ludwig, I've got Henry Roche, I've got Art Spectrum, I've got Giraud, all of which I use all together. I can tell, and I don't have any papers on any of them, but I can tell what they are by their weight and density. You can feel it. So if I was blindfold, I wouldn't be able to tell you the color, but I could tell you what type of pastel it is just simply by its weight and its the density, the feel in your hand. You can feel it. So all of those were very good. Oh, the other Art Spectrum colour fixed paper is quite good too, but I probably tend to now go with the Fisher 400 and
Art Spectrum something to do with.
Oh, the art Spectrum. That being said, in the things that I would most want in my set of colours, if I was starting out now with the knowledge that I have, the sets that I would have would be the Terry Ludwig Intensified Darks, because you can't get anything more velvety and smooth and lovely than those darks. They are so rich, they're beautiful. Then the other thing I need, and if you can't afford both sets, the set 1 and set 2, get set 2, because, well, for me, I can find some of the other colours in the other brands, but in set 2, you've got those wonderful chocolates, the violets, the deep dark blues, some of those greyed off greens, which are really, really helpful for anything that you paint. The other thing I would want are some brights, B-R-I-G-H-T-S, brights, as opposed to lights, brights. And the thing that the set that I would get would be the Sennelier Paris collection, 120 half sticks assorted. They've got some wonderful brights in them. They're the ones if I couldn't get anything else, I would get that. And then I would want some soft tinted lights, L-I-G-H-T-S. And the best ones in the market are the original Art Spectrum extra soft tinted lights, because you don't want white so much, you want tinted whites. And they are really remarkable. Very little of my pastels, anywhere that I have light, is I rarely use pure white. Rarely use pure white. It would always be a tinted light. And can we go now to the light reveal? That's the Nautilus. And I'll show you something that looks extraordinarily bright. This is all again about reflected light, but it's on an object rather than reflections. It's coming, coming, coming. But those, so those are the 3 sets that I would have. keep in my arsenal. I always keep them. The other set I love for portraits are Great American Artworks, the Judith Carducci set of from Great American Artworks, and I love their grade off colours. Oh, the other one I didn't mention too is Richardson. Richardson pastels. I love the Richardson pastels. They've got a set of greys which are incredibly useful. Most of my pastel works, even though people say, oh, they're so bright and so clear, they're more about the grade off colours than the bright colours in some ways, because it's grade off colours that make things appear bright. So those more neutralised colours. Well, it's like a traffic light on a grey, rainy day. It's very helpful for knowing when to stop. And lights during the day, the electric light during the day isn't as efficient as a light at night. So the light at night does more. It lights up the darkness. So here we have a couple of shells, Nautilus, reflected into a tabletop. I love doing these shiny things, and it's again all about value relationships, especially in, say, that the shell at the front there, the one which is the Nautilus with its exterior coating taken off, and we see the nacre or the pearl within. And to do that, it's all about squinting, being able to see the value relationships, and then opening your eyes up to identify the colours. Now, there's a multitude of colours that get reflected into the pearl, and it's so much fun to do. Even in that painting, I have not used white on the white and in the light area. That one I would have used the Art Spectrum soft tinted white, and it would have been lemon yellow. So if I really, but I can still ramp that light up if I wanted to by going to a pure white, the titanium white or something like that. But that was a fun thing to do. Let's go on to some, one more reflective one, Life in a Bubble. This is an oil, Life in a Bubble. And this is one of my most recent works, and then we'll have a look at some of the florals. Life in a Bubble is coming. And this is part of a series. I do a number of series. One is Reflections on a Journey, which is my journey, those reflection ones, my journey physically, spiritually, America.
That's currently in America.
This painting is currently in America. It's at the International Guild of Realism's exhibition in Scottsdale, Arizona at the Brennan Gallery. So it's part of that exhibition. This is part of my what I call Slice of Life series, which is just taking long, skinny bits out of life. And I like this sort of composition, these long, thin pieces that show you the world within world, in this case of bubbles, being able to see through, and the bubbles themselves reflect the life around. And you can see that I haven't drawn all these kids running along the bottom. Where's the rest of their body? And why didn't I paint the rest of their body? I don't know. It just seemed more fun to chop them off. And the man on the left-hand side with his hand out, he's got a lead in his hand, and because and a dog on the end, obviously, but because this is a wraparound canvas, I painted the image of the lead going around the other side of the canvas. I painted the images of the faces of the children, the rest, and their bodies going around the other side of the canvas, so that it was all just a bit of fun. But within the individual bubbles, you can actually see more of the scene, not just behind or through the bubbles, but the scene of life behind as well. There's palm trees, there's all sorts of, the figures distorted, all sorts of things in those bubbles. So a lot of fun. Again, all alluding to or using line value color edge to achieve that look. But, you know, also the response, the subject is my emotional content. You know, it's not about just about technique. It's about your response, your emotional response to your subject. And that emotional response goes beyond technique. It goes into composition. How am I going to show the things that I loved about the scene, the light and the joy of the whole thing, my response of joy to the subject. The technical know-how gives you wings for flight to express what you want to say. And so that's what I'm doing here. And I called it life in a bubble, because often we live in a bubble, but isn't it fun to see a whole environment through a bubble? Okay.
3 sets. The Ludwig and Ken starts too.
Oh yeah, Ken's the 3 sets were Terry Ludwig Intensify Darks set 2, the Paris collection in Sennelier, which is 120 half sticks assorted, and the Art Spectrum. There's 2 sets of 6. One's a cool set, one's a warm set of extra soft tinted whites. Those are the ones. Ken's just typing that in now. And when he has finished typing that in, let's have a look at, I don't know, let's have a look at, we'll go into two different ones.
Good.
One in pastel and one in oil. We're looking at some florals now. Go to iridescence. Iridescence is quite a small work, and it again was shown at IAPS a few years back. I think it was one of the first ones that I had accepted into one of the IAPS competitions. May have been. Here it is. A little bit blurry, but anyway, there we are. What size is that, Pip?
17 by 10.
So 17 by 10 inches. It's quite small. Of the hippeastrums, I think you call them amarillos. Amaryllis. And we call them hippeastrums. But this was a lot of fun to do. My florals, you know, the reason I started doing flowers, as I said originally, I was a landscape painter in oils only. Then I went into pastel, and I rediscovered, because a friend said to me, an elderly artist friend, I originally went to him and I said, George, do you know anything about pastels? And he said, no, Lyn, I don't. Go off and copy the masters, you'll be right. And so I did. And so I copied a lot of my favorite portraits, and I rediscovered my love of the portrait genre that I used to do when I was a kid at school. I used to paint and draw all my friends at school. And so I rediscovered my love of portraiture and figurative art. And then my hairdresser was renovating a salon, her hair salon. And she said to me, Lyn, can I have a large oil painting, please? It was 3 foot by 3 foot. That was large for me at that time, not so large now. 3 foot by 3 foot of frangipani's. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do that. And so I painted these frangipani's, and it was so much fun. And then it sold straight away. I thought, oh, okay. And so I painted a very large oil, 6 foot by 3 foot one of irises, and it sold straight away. I thought, oh, I might be onto something here. And I love flowers. I'm a keen gardener anyway. And so it was just like combining my love of gardening with the love of flowers. And it meant that I could paint them however I wanted to paint them, and they would never die. So that started my floral journey. For a long time, I did not paint flowers in pastel, because I didn't believe that I could get the same light, play of light and intensity and depth in pastel as I could with the oils. And that was at the time when we didn't have Kitty Wallace paper. So I went and I was doing an en plein air workshop over in Albuquerque, and we were talking about papers, and that was the time when Kitty Wallace, the white Kitty Wallace, came out, and everyone was talking about Kitty Wallace, and I said, oh, Art Spectrum Rose Grey's pretty good, and they said, no, we used to use that. We use Kitty Wallace now. Would you like to try this white paper? And I said, oh, okay. But my very first pass of pastel across that paper was like an electric shock. Everything was so clear, and then the cogs in my mind started going clunk, clunk, clunk. This is interesting. I wonder what. I wonder if I could do florals on this. And so I started experimenting with it, and the rest is history. The world of florals, is the world of color, is the world of twists and turns and curves and twirls and twiddles and patterns on top of twiddles and twists and turns. I think the world of florals is one of the hardest genre to do in this particular way. And so to me, it was like a red rag to a bull. I had to pursue it to see what I could achieve with this dry medium, with pastel now. And so the rest is history, I guess. Off I went doing florals. And in the world of florals is a great world of learning. And there's not much I can say that I don't know about colour now. But my colour theory is very, very simple, and it's what I learnt in primary school. That was red and yellow makes orange, red and blue makes purple, though not always, depending on what pigment you have in the reds. And blue and yellow makes green, and all three makes brown. That's my colour theory. And so when I'm looking at colour, I'm looking at, is it a pure bright, which means it's either one of the pure pigments or two combined, like red and yellow. Then it becomes a primary into secondary. Is it a bright colour, or is it a sort of a browny kind of colour, greyed down, which means it's got all three, because all three makes brown. And so that's my colour theory. And on that theory, I can mix any colour I like and come up with the right pigments as long as I've got them in my box. Ken's waving.
International artist and the Eric Rhodes video.
Oh, okay. Coming up soon, Ken's, my prompt is over the back. The current issue of the International Artist magazine has an article written by me about a floral, and Ken can get that painting. No, you can't. I'll unclip it at the top, Ken. You hang on to it before you unclip it.
What's the
Hey, it's just attached to the back. Just, no, you have to take the individual painting off.
Oh, you're a problem. There's 3 clips.
Yeah, well, unclip 3 clips. Ken's saying there's 3 clips. Unclip 3 clips, Ken. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, so in the current magazine is out, and this is, Ken will have to see whether it's in the right place or not.
A little bit that way.
Okay, so that is done in a step-by-step in the current international magazine. April, May, international magazine. International Artists magazine. Also, I've got coming out very soon on Streamline Publishers a video, which is I describe every action that I do through the video. It's coming out with Streamline Publishers very, very soon, so keep an eye out for that. That's just my little plug. Okay, let's go on to the oil dahlias extravaganza, Ken, because I know that Bonnie liked this one, so I'll put it up. Here it comes. This is an oil. This was actually accepted by the International Guild of Realism and it won the still life or floral category long years ago now. It's quite a few years old. Here it comes.
2010.
2010. This was painted in.
Well, I was exhibited.
Exhibited in, yeah, but it was painted in that year. So that just shows my crazy nature of working light against light, dark against dark, edge against edge, color against color, and extravaganza. Often how do we come up with a title? How do I come up with a title for my paintings? Often it's a sense of, in this case, say, oh, they're just extravagant balloons, aren't they? They're just so like fireworks. And so I called it extravaganza because of that. But there will be other times where, like, as in some of the previous paintings, I Am Not Afraid was making my own personal statement of my sense of me against the world, and encouraging other people to find out why they are not afraid and how they can face the world. Reflect Life in a Bubble was about my joy of seeing the fun of the kids, but also responding to how we can live in a bubble. Reflecting in History, which is, have we done that one?
No, you haven't. You want to do that?
Oh, Reflecting in History. Yeah, this is a
Oh.
portrait. Reflecting History. Was my response to seeing life in sunglasses. And I was at an archaeological dig in Rhodes over in Greece, and it was one of my favorite archaeological digs. That was the only other thing I really wanted to be, apart from an artist, was an archaeologist. And here's this guy who was standing set against the sky, but in his sunglasses, and I loved the fact that the light shone through the holes in his hat. This was at the last IAPS convention. I was very excited to have a portrait chosen for the convention instead of a floral, because I paint anything and everything. And I actually love portraiture as is one of my favorite genres. And I love the way within his sunglasses, if we can just come in on the sunglasses, the archaeological dig, or part of it, was reflected into his sunglasses. And yeah, and you can even see people there, the rest of the tourists reflected there. And so my philosophy there of having life reflected in all kinds of things, but also just the light shining through his hat. Now, if I'd included the whole hat, it would have lost its impact. So this is, again, a bit of my slice of life, if we can draw it back out again. Slice of life, just seeing part thereof, and offsetting into the one corner and giving distance into the direction that the head is facing. So there's this sense of atmosphere around the subject. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that, and I had a lot of fun doing the little whiskers, the bright whiskers that are picking up with the sunlight too. Another floral would be, what about Rhythm on Blues? Rhythm on Blues. So often I name things after a song, you know, as well, or a bit of a twist on a song. So here we have Rhythm on Blues. This was done as a demonstration in China in, I don't know what year.
2019, I think.
2019, I think I was in China just before everything hit the fan in the world of COVID. I was over there in China demonstrating for the 100 years of pasteling in China celebrations. And I really enjoyed doing this, all of the twists and turns. This is a Bonbax flower, B-O-N-B-A-X. It actually is a traditional, it's from China, but here in my area, we have a lot of them growing. Beautiful big tropical trees. big waxy flowers with these great big seed pods. Again, set against the blue sky. Sometimes I don't have the background, you know, a lot of activity in the background. It's all about the activity of flowers. And it's a very rhythmical composition. So called it Rhythm on Blues. Ken's telling me time. We can go to Emerson. Let's go to Emerson. This is again a portrait, a pastel portrait. It's done on UART 800. Not a paper that I use a lot because it's very fickle. It's very hard to, it seems to be you touch it and you pull more off than you put on. This is my niece, Emma, and she was a Japanese teacher, and she went to Japan to teach English, and she spent a year in Japan, and so she would wear the kimono, the traditional dress. This was given Pastelist of the Year in our Pastel Society of Australia in 2016, and so again, it's quite an old one. I loved doing the detail on the outfit and the big red bow. I again left the background fairly vacant, as opposed to, say, in the light of history, that original vase of flowers against all of the activity of the tapestry. So yeah, I love the also composing her head, looking backwards over the shoulders so that I could see that lovely bow on the back of her outfit. Doing folds, ripples and rolls and folds, then with a pattern. In this case, because the pattern was a big part of the outfit, I did do each individual pattern, each individual flower as a landscape of colour and of values and edges in its own right. Whereas quite often I will do the under the pattern, the overall effect of the way in which the folds are sitting in values, and then put the pattern on top of it. But in this case, I did the pattern individually. Sorry?
The demo.
What demo?
You're still live on Saturday with 5 minutes.
Oh, if any, Ken said,
Yeah.
If
you want to see it in action.
If you want to see an actual demonstration of a shell, a Nautilus shell with that is the pearlized one on a blue cloth, I'm doing a demonstration on Saturday morning our time. We can send you the details on that. There's just a 2-hour demonstration. I think that ends up being evening or afternoon your time. Ken will send it through, and it's only $35 Australian, so that's about
24 US.
24 US, for $24 US for all and sundry, just for 2 hours if you want to watch that.
Great.
Bonnie, I don't know, is there anything else that I should send through, or you need some questions?
Well, you know, I think, Lyn, you've shown us such a great selection of your work, and both in oils and pastels. And you know, we're probably coming into closing on our time frame, but there were a couple of people that made a couple of comments. You know, it was someone said thank you very much. There was another. Let's see. Oh, Jean says beautiful, and your dedication to your vision is amazing, and I can't agree more. I mean, you're such an innovator with the pastels and your oils, and I guess if we want to wrap things up, I would just like for you to, you know, if you have any final tips to new artists, to old artists, anything you want to bring forth.
I think, you know, pursue with a passion. Pursue with a passion. Always be a student. Never think you've arrived, because what is arrival? I think every artist that I've looked up to, you know, the ones that I think have arrived, never believe that they've arrived. There's always more to learn. There's always more ways of looking at things. But most of all, the best bit of advice I think I was ever given was that I had to do a portrait. It was a portrait commission of a very dear friend. Her daughter-in-law had commissioned me to do the portrait of her mother-in-law for her husband, for the daughter-in-law's husband. She had a lot of meaning, meaning for our family, this lady, because we have a disabled younger son. He's intellectually impaired, and this lady was an international shell guru. And our boy Kyle, he can't add one and one together, but he can name every shell there is by its real name. And this lady called Ina took Kyle under her wing at a very young age to teach him everything about shells. And so she was a very special lady to our family. So I really wanted to do a very good job. So I could feel this anxiety coming down on my shoulders. And, you know, I've got to do, and as soon as you do that, you cannot paint. Because as soon as you doubt, you cannot paint. Doubt is utterly crippling to an artist thinking about, I wonder if I'll do a good job. It is utterly crippling. And but the daughter-in-law, as she disappeared out the door, said to me, enjoy, Lyn, enjoy. And I thought, yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And so I totally enjoyed doing this work. People who say to me, oh, I can't paint, portraits or commissions or whatever, I just say, oh, don't even think about the stresses of it. Think about the enjoyment of it. Enjoy the modeling of form. Enjoy just the whole sense of the treasure of being an artist, of creating. This business of creativity is such that there's the painting that I did of this lady. And this is very, very old. This goes back, it was an oil. 1990 something. But the most important thing is to enjoy what you do, put your heart into it. Yes, sometimes it can be a battleground because some days you're just tired, or everything else, or the world outside is pressing in. But I can tell you what, the painting and creativity is a wonderful thing for your mental health, let alone anything else. And the fun of getting together with other creatives is priceless.
Yeah. So don't you think, I always think about, you know, people say, well, this is your job. And it's like, well, it isn't that I have to go to work. It's that I get to go to work.
Yeah. And I pinch myself and I say, you're going to pay me to do that? Okay.
There's a couple of more comments here. Let's see if I can get them over here. It says, thank you. This is from BK. I don't know who that is. Thank you for the many valuable tips as well as for showing your stunning art. Love your passion. Mickey says, fabulous to see your work and finally see you. Ron says, you do amazing work. It helps to see what is really possible in pastels. And Sally says, enjoyed getting to know you. Oh, I just lost this. Very motivating as well. I want to try your journaling practice. Many thanks. Dawn says, thanks. Stunning paintings and so on. So you've got a lot of fans in the US and where everybody's watching from. So, you know, I certainly appreciate your time. And any final words, Lyn?
Oh, no, here's the daylight out there. It's a bit overcast here. The sun has come up and all is good. All is good. I can tell you definitively that tomorrow is grand.
All right.
Perfect.
Safe travels to the US when you come over,
Thank
and then enjoy your trip and your painting at the plein air convention, and then your journey to IAPS, and enjoy New Mexico, one of my favorite spots.
Yeah, thank you so much, and hopefully I might see some of you over there. Make sure you come and give me a,
Say hello.
say hello, and it'll be great to see some that are at IAPS.
I think there's quite a few people from the Pastel Society of the West Coast that are going to be going there. So I think
Yeah.
there's a good contingency of those of our membership.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I don't know how many Aussies are going, whether there's any others. I haven't heard yet. Oh, Steffi Clark. She'll be there too. Steffi and I, we enjoy each other's company. Heaven help America.
Right. Well, Lyn, thank you for your time. Ken, thank you for being the great AV guy and answering questions as they came up around a product. And
Okay, and as I go to close the meeting, I invite you to unmute yourself and say thank you and goodbye, and then I'm going to close us up.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Lyn. Really appreciate it and love your work.
Thank you
so much.
Ditto here.
Thank you. It was wonderful and good to see you.
Did you get together?
No.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
thanks, Pam.
All the best, you guys. Happy painting.